Senator, what do you know about communism that most Americans don't with your background?
Communism is the most evil, twisted, depraved ideology mankind has ever produced. It has resulted in more murder, more suffering, more torture, more poverty, more misery than any ideology. It is unequivocally evil. I hate communists.
Capitalism and imperialism are incompatible with human well-being and a habitable planet. As global crises continue to accelerate, people are increasingly waking up to the fact that we need something radically different. But what could this be? One solution, which countless movements around the world have struggled for, is socialism. But socialism is usually treated as unthinkable, taboo, or even dangerous. Why is this? Because socialism poses an existential threat to the capitalist ruling class. To smother the popular appeal of socialism, they have orchestrated a global anti-communist propaganda campaign for over a century, influencing the books we read, the shows we watch, and the history we're taught. Many of the myths about socialism from the 20th century still have a hold on society today, limiting our sense of possibility and foreclosing pathways for moving beyond the horrors of capitalism and imperialism. So let's address 5 of the most common anti-communist myths. Often when you bring up socialism, someone will inevitably chime in and say that it hasn't worked. We tried it and it failed. When judging real existing socialist states, we need to recognise that the transition out of capitalism will be a long process that will unfold on a global scale. The challenges of initiating this transition within a world system still dominated by capitalism are overwhelming. From the Soviet Union to Cuba, socialist states have had to develop their economies and transform their societies under conditions of imperialist siege, whether that be in the form of invasions, sanctions, or coups. Immediately after the 1917 Russian Revolution, the UK, US, Germany, Japan, and 12 other foreign countries invaded the Soviet Union with 180,000 troops. Although the Soviet Union defeated this counter-revolution, it was only the first of many attacks it would face over the following decades, which included nuclear encirclement and constant economic destabilisation. Even so, the Soviet Union managed to develop from a poor peasant society into a modern industrial economy within a single generation. By the 1950s, Soviet industrial output surpassed that of England and Germany. Halfway across the world, Cuba has been blockaded since 1960 in a sustained attempt to crush its socialist project. Despite being cut off from the global economy, Cuba has still managed to increase life expectancy by over 15 years, even surpassing life expectancy in the US. In other places, socialist construction was derailed before it even began. In Indonesia, for example, the US assisted in the mass extermination of the Communist Party of Indonesia, killing an estimated 500,000 to 1 million alleged party members between 1965 and 1966. To this day, the party remains banned. If capitalism values competition so much, why not let socialist projects develop on their own terms and see who wins out? When assessing the success of socialist projects, we often hear things like, capitalism is clearly superior. Just compare the living standards in the West with the Soviet Union or contemporary China. This myth ignores the conditions that socialist states have had to start from. Most were established in the global South, inheriting terrible conditions of underdevelopment, and still, the improvements in ordinary people's lives have been extraordinary. In China, 850 million people have been lifted out of poverty since the revolution in 1949. That makes China responsible for about 3/4 of all global poverty alleviation between 1980 and 2020. During Thomas Sankara's presidency, the literacy rate in Burkina Faso increased from 13% to 73% in just 5 years. Even in already advanced economies, socialist states made huge progress. In the German Democratic Republic, for example, women experienced a dramatic expansion of rights and freedoms, supported by free childcare and economic opportunity. By 1989, 92.4% of all working-age women were employed, and most were unionised. As explained by political economist Jason Hickel, these are not anomalies, but part of a wider trend.
So in the West, there's this widespread assumption that socialism in the 20th century was a failure that led to poverty and misery for the masses. But in fact, the empirical evidence points to a very different story. Our research team conducted a study comparing social outcomes between the socialist and capitalist countries during the 1980s. The study was led by Leah Tamberg and Dylan Sullivan and is currently under review. What we found is that the socialist countries tended to have better social outcomes than their capitalist counterparts at any given level of income. So for example, the socialist countries had much lower levels of poverty. In the capitalist countries, the average poverty rate was around 12 times higher. We also found that the socialist countries had a higher life expectancy. In the lower income range, people in the socialist countries could expect to live up to 20 years longer. The socialist countries also had lower infant mortality rates, lower child mortality rates, lower rates of death due to malnutrition, and lower rates of death due to poor sanitation systems. They had better access to electricity and better food availability. They had better healthcare systems, better education systems, and they achieved substantially higher literacy rates. The socialist countries also dramatically outperformed the capitalist countries on gender equality. They had greater gender equality in the workforce, women had a greater share of national income, and there was greater representation of women in parliament. Now, obviously, these societies were not perfect, but it's clear that they were remarkably successful in terms of delivering human development. They were more efficient at converting production into social progress because they organized production directly around human needs and well-being rather than around maximizing profits.
We also have to account for the fact that socialist states have achieved all of this without relying on imperialism. In comparison, development in advanced capitalist countries depends on the systemic impoverishment of others. We can see this on a global scale, with the countries of the global north violently draining wealth from the south, as well as within capitalist societies between the rich and the poor. The US, for example, has over 700,000 unhoused people, despite being the most wealthy country in the world. Socialism provides the foundation for freeing all of humanity from immiseration. Capitalism depends on it. Socialism is often characterised as an authoritarian system with no democratic freedoms. First, we must acknowledge that authoritarianism is the primary ideological framework pushed by Western governments to villainise socialist projects and legitimise the use of extreme violence against them. The real concern for Western powers is the degree of authority that socialist states have to challenge foreign capital by nationalising key industries, land and resources. These claims of authoritarianism rarely reflect the actual political or economic reality within socialist states. This is made clear in cases like Chile, where democratically elected President Salvador Allende was deposed in a US-backed coup after nationalising large sections of the economy and redistributing land. He was replaced by General Augusto Pinochet, who rolled in neoliberalism while executing political opponents by the thousands. Second, we must ask what we mean by democracy and freedom. Where liberal capitalist democracies offer democracy only in the sense of narrow political participation, socialism seeks to democratise the very basis of life. Collective ownership, public planning, and workplace democracy provide the material foundation for more substantial democratic control. Real existing socialist projects demonstrate what this can look like. In Venezuela, a large proportion of the population is organised into a network of over 3,000 communes, where ordinary people make decisions about how to plan economic production and allocate resources to solve local problems. In doing so, they gain direct experience in managing the development of society and their own livelihoods. In China, freedom from hunger, homelessness and deprivation has provided the material foundation for deeper engagement in public life. Almost 100 million people are active members of the Communist Party of China, and public programs like the Targeted Poverty Alleviation Program depend on the systematic consultation of the Chinese people. It's no surprise then that the Democracy Perception Index found that 83% of respondents in China believe their country is democratic, compared to just 49% in the US. That being said, it's true that some socialist states have developed restrictive measures under the conditions of imperialist siege, often aided by internal collaborators. Mistakes and excesses have definitely been committed, but this can't be taken out of their context.
So you compare a country to what it came from, with all its imperfections, and those who demand instant perfection. The day after the revolution, they get up and say, are there civil liberties for the fascists? Are they going to be allowed to have their newspapers and their radio program? Are they going to be able to keep all their farms? The passion that some of our liberals feel, the day after the revolution, the passion and concern they feel for the fascists, the civil rights and civil liberties of those fascists who were dumping and destroying and murdering people before. Now the revolution has got to be perfect. It's got to be flawless. Well, that isn't my criteria. My criteria is what happens to those people who couldn't read? What happens to those babies that couldn't eat, that died of hunger? And that's why I support revolution. The revolution that feeds the children gets my support.
The fundamental question when talking about freedom and democracy is whether the working and oppressed majority are empowered to collectively shape the structures that govern their lives. And socialist states provide the material foundation for this to occur, while capitalist states systematically deny it. We sometimes hear this claim that 100 million people died under communism. This figure comes from the 1997 Black Book of Communism and is frequently peddled by bad faith actors like the US government-funded Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. This attempt to discredit real existing socialism relies not only on outright falsehoods and arbitrary accounting, but also makes a huge leap by blaming a socialist state for any death connected to general economic development. For example, the single biggest contributing event to the claimed 100 million figure is the Great Leap Forward in China. An honest assessment must account for the concrete challenges of rapid development. In the 1950s, China faced the dilemma of needing to industrialise in order to boost agricultural output, while simultaneously relying on that very agricultural output to feed the growing industrial workforce. The Great Leap Forward attempted to improve agricultural productivity through rapid collectivisation in the countryside, while redirecting millions of peasants into industrial work. This initiative experienced huge challenges, including failures in food stock reporting and a severe multi-year drought. While the resulting famine is a tragedy, it is absurd to wholly attribute this to socialism or claim that it was intentional. We must also contextualise the human cost of socialist development in relation to capitalist development. In the territory that is today Australia, European settlers exterminated approximately 80% of the indigenous population. In what is now the United States, this figure stands at 95%. Excess mortality under British colonial rule in India is estimated at 165 million people between 1880 and 1920. Under Belgium's regime of terror in the Congo from 1885 to 1908, 8 million Congolese died. The list goes on. Deaths associated with socialist states are incomparable to the mountain of corpses that capitalism is built on. Finally, a common claim is that real existing socialist states are ecologically destructive. This often provides the basis for those concerned about the environment to reject socialism. To a certain extent, this claim is true. Many socialist states pursued rapid industrialisation, which had serious ecological impacts. But this doesn't prove socialism to be anti-ecological. Socialist states in the global south and on the margins of the capitalist core had to rapidly develop their economies in order to address conditions of poverty, precarity and immiseration. Agrarian reform and industrialisation are necessary preconditions for delivering dignified lives to all. Socialism is not a project of socialising poverty. That being said, many socialist states have explicitly recognised the contradiction between development and ecological stability and have shown a much greater capacity to address environmental harm than capitalist countries. After Burkina Faso experienced one of the deadliest droughts in Africa's history, Thomas Sankara mobilised his people to plant over 10 million trees in just 15 months, slowing desertification and improving soil health. Cuba has innovated a national system of agroecological farming that confronts the inherited conditions of plantation capitalism, restores ecosystems and feeds its people. This was made possible by carefully planned state-led programs to redistribute land and direct resources. China reached peak emissions in 2024, 5 years ahead of schedule, and is the world leader in renewable energy development. In 2023, China installed more solar capacity than the US has in its entire history and is set to account for over half of global renewable energy production by the end of the decade. Capitalism's drive for endless growth is the root cause of ecological breakdown. Socialism, by contrast, enables people to meet their needs in harmony with non-human nature. Anti-communist myths are not accidental. They are the product of a long ideological and material war against capitalism's greatest foe. These myths are often blindly accepted. As we face ecological collapse and the looming threat of global war, the question is not whether capitalism must be replaced, but whether we are willing to seriously consider socialism as a viable and desirable alternative. This requires appraising real existing socialist projects, including their mistakes, learning their lessons, and making our own contributions to this unfinished world historical task of building a more just, dignified world.
Socialism doesn't fall because of betrayal. No system does. The person who betrays themselves goes to the mud, but the system, with its eternal principles, keep marching on.
Socialism is not a relic of the past, it is the horizon.